Hello and welcome. You're listening to Village Mama, a podcast that inspires us moms to pause in the midst of our busyness, to connect with each other, and to know that we are not alone on this parenting journey. My name is Charlex, and I'm a transformation coach and mom of two, and I create e-courses for busy moms to help guide them on their journey of self-discovery. Each week, I'm sitting down with moms to talk about their journey of parenting and the lessons that they have learned. I want you to consider this your community. I want you to consider us your tribe. Come on in and relax a bit because you are always welcomed in the Village Mama. Hello, Karen. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about you?
Hi, Char. Thanks for having me on. I am a mom to an 8-year-old his name's Leo, so we'll just call him by name now. He's 8.5. And I'm also a chiropractor and rehabilitation specialist here in Toronto. I work out of a clinic at Yonge. It's on Shepherd Avenue West, just west of Yonge. So that's a little bit about it.
And so Leo is 8 years old.
Yes, he's 8, in grade 3 French immersion now.
Oh, wow. French immersion. Love it. My kids are in French immersion too. I'm curious about when you first had Leo. What was that experience like for you? What was your birth story?
I had a normal pregnancy. Everything was fine. I was treating patients, doing insurance work. Everything was just great up until week 36. And then my blood pressure all of a sudden shot through the roof, and we didn't know why. So because the obstetrician, I was with an obstetrician, because the obstetrician knew that I was a chiropractor, she said, okay, go home, but if your blood pressure doesn't come down, because it was really unusual for it to be high at all, she says, come into the hospital this weekend. I guess that was at week 37. I can't remember now. It was 8 years ago. Anyway, so it didn't come down, and I went to the hospital, and they decided to induce me because my blood pressure was full. It was really high. It was pre-eclampsia, basically. And they decided to induce me and start the process because this was at week 37.4, and started the process of having the baby. So I knew being a chiropractor, I wanted to do everything naturally. I wanted to have a natural birth with no medication, and this was my birth plan. And my one caveat to myself was if I have to be induced, I will have the epidural because my body is not prepared, This is kind of how I thought of it. So, I always tell patients of mine, I treat a lot of pregnant women. I treat a lot of babies. I treat a lot of women in their 4th trimester, the one that happened right after birth that lasts quite a while. That 4th trimester, we need to get our bodies back. But I tell a lot of women, make a plan, but have it be simple. Have scenarios in your mind because things are going to go sideways, and that happens. And it's normal. So I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. So it was a really good thing that I had the epidural because had I not, I would have had to have a spinal, which is more risky and recovery rates aren't good. So it was really a good decision. So that was all fine. It was a bit traumatic because everything happened really quickly. The baby's heart was decelerating. But anyway, I ended up being healthy. Leo was fine as well. And then I ended up being stuck in the hospital for 3 days recovering. And he latched really well. Breastfeeding was going well. And then everything was wonderful. It was like perfect. And then day 3, that last night I was in the hospital, one of the nurses, I think it was day 2, the baby just kind of latches and that's how the milk comes in. But nobody told me that. And I didn't really get that. And I thought, I called the nurse and I said, is this normal? Is he self-soothing? Or is it like, I don't know what this is. And all she really needed to tell me was, this is normal. This is what makes your milk come in. And he's just going to do this all night. And instead, she either confused me with another patient or I'm not sure what, but she yelled at me. Yelled at me and, said, well, if you had let us give him a supplement, you wouldn't be having this problem. You'd be sleeping right now. And the supplement was never offered. So I really don't know what happened, but it was really awful. And it shouldn't have happened. And I hear story after story after story of people going through sort of having one rough shift with the nurse and It was a nurse who had previously been really lovely. So I don't know what was going on with her. I'm not blaming her. Something else. Maybe she confused me with somebody else. But it really knocked my self-confidence to the floor. I went home. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt really horrible. Luckily, somebody had given me the name of a lactation consultant, did house calls. So we called her over right away. I was beside myself. It sort of put me into, we didn't know what to do. We were so confused. We got home and we were just, we figure out how to set up the pack and play. We just, I was crying. I couldn't do anything. It felt like anything right. And I had this wonderful woman come in and do a, hour consult saying, nope, the lact is fine. Everything is perfect. You're doing just fine. She came in, she calmed me down, and it was the best $100 I ever spent in my life. So I always tell patients, if you're having any trouble, if you're having any worries, anything at all, call my cell phone, call it, okay? I always call patients who I know who've had their baby as well, because if I can give them advice over the phone, I'll do that. If I need to come and see them, I will. I'm not a lactation consultant, but if they're in pain, I've gotten lots of patients out of bed after birth because they've been in pain. I do house calls then. Or I refer them to a doula service I know who have lots of lactation consultants who will come to you and help you. And since I've been working with them, I've seen tons of babies with tongue tie, people having problems with latch or pain during breastfeeding, which is, by the way, never, ever normal. So if you have any pain with that, you need to see somebody to figure out what's going on. So anyway, my birth story was fine, and then it was really rough, and then it was fine again. But I think it was there because it taught me something really important about what can happen. And even if you're strong, self-confident, and a medical practitioner, you can have your confidence crushed to the floor by one person. So it's important to have a village around you and people who know what they're talking about, and to get another opinion and know who to call when you need somebody.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That experience was just rough, right?
Yeah, it was. But, I often look at, even a rough experience is there for a reason. It took a little while, but why did I have to go through that? And it was a really good learning experience. So It made me a better doctor.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Even when we go through difficult times, there are opportunities to learn. And I love your attitude. That's one of the first things that I noticed about you when we first met, because you just have this really big energy to you, and you're really positive, and you're funny and a little bit wild and crazy. And I'm like, I like her. Right?
I try.
And so I think this is good for the other mamas who are listening in to realize that even when you are someone with a lot of big, good energy, you too can get knocked down sometimes, and it's still,
absolutely.
Yeah. And you still need people around you to help to build you back up and to pick you up, right? We're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be in community.
Absolutely. And even though I project this big energy, which I have most of the time, I do, and I live that way, and I do it on purpose because I want to live out loud. In fact, my nickname, in my head for myself and my practice is Badass Chiro. I'm Badass Chiro. I have a T-shirt. I wear it on Friday.
I love that you wear it on Fridays.
Wear it on Fridays. It's my dress down. And I Shar, she's on my Facebook feed, and anyone who's welcome to look at it as well, personally or on the business. But I try to do all sorts of things that I've never done before, because that's what we're here for, right? So most recently I was in Caravana, in the parade, wearing feathers and the sparkles. 1 month for my 44th birthday. I've done all sorts of crazy things, and fun things. They're fun. Shortly I'll be in the Santa Claus parade with my family, and 2 parades a year. That's not bad. But I also want to, that being said, I come across as this wonderful, fun-loving, happy person all the time, and I am that most of the time. But I also suffer with anxiety, so that may be something that people don't see all the time. But I really like to point it out. And right now I'm good, right? But I've gone through a few bouts of really severe anxiety and depression. Because it can happen to anyone. It started for me with postpartum, actually about 7 months after Leo was born, and I started weaning with breastfeeding. And with the hormone change, I went into a full depression for the first time. I think I had depression prior to that, but this was a full depression that I needed medication. I needed some intervention. And since then, it's happened a couple of times. Most of the time, I feel great, right? And I have lots of different skills and ways of helping myself through those things. But I can't tell you how many of my patients have anxiety and depression issues. And so again, this has made me a better doctor because sometimes people are referred to me just because of the anxiety. People start to get to know that I've gone through it and I have ways of helping, and chiropractic is powerful for helping people feel better as well with that. But, I like to put that out there because that's something that may not come across in everyday life or that people talk about.
Mm-hmm. And you're not the first mom who I've heard said that postpartum, they started like developing anxiety, right? Like
Yeah.
it's actually more common than I think we know about, right? Like when I was pregnant and when I just had babies, I didn't realize how high these numbers were.
And anxiety, I'm not a mental health professional, but it's on the continuum with depression. Anxiety can lead into depression, or depression can lead to anxiety. It's like they walk hand in hand. I'm not even sure that they're separate things. You have to ask a mental health professional, but they walk hand in hand very often. And it's important to know with postpartum that can start anywhere up to 2 years after having a baby. And a lot of people don't quite know that. I think it's, within the first few months. For me, it was 7 months later.
Mm-hmm. And so what tips would you give to moms who are maybe in that 2-year span and they're starting to experience some of these symptoms of anxiety and depression? What did you do to help get you over the hump of that?
Okay, so I reached out for help. I realized what was going on. Sometimes that's the hardest part, right? So your immediate family and people surrounding you need to watch for signs and symptoms. But because it's not often that you can put a label on it. You don't know why you're feeling so strange or different or weird or, and then, you need to reach out for help. Go see the family doctor if you need to. Speak to your friends and family. Go take care of yourself. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. We're so wrapped up in taking care of our kids, we forget to take care of ourselves. But if we don't refill our cup, then we're not going to be well enough to take care of anybody else. So something one of my girlfriends once told me, she's also a chiropractor, so she said, check a few things. Have I slept? Have I eaten? Have I exercised? Those are 3 biggies. And, I'm a chiropractor, so I get adjusted because I feel that if I don't, my nervous system isn't functioning perfectly, so my body can't heal. And, communication between your brain and the rest of your body is really, really important. That's what chiropractic deals with. People usually find us because they're in pain, but it's also about the nervous system. So that's really important. But, have I slept? Have I eaten? Have I exercised? And I like to add a 4th one in there, I meditated. Meditation is really, really important to mental health and well-being.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because recently I was talking to someone about meditation, and I think that sometimes we think that you have to be super still and sit there in yoga pose and that's how you meditate. But this person was actually talking about things like walking meditation, So getting out in nature and actually like walking surrounded by trees, surrounded by sunlight, and as you're walking, looking at your footsteps, one in front of the other, and how even that can be a meditative practice. And so I think that we need to also expand people's minds around what it means to meditate.
Absolutely. Also, running can be very meditative because you can't really think of much when you're running, just putting one foot in front of the other. So I used to find that very meditative, but now I do a lot of like trying to be quiet and still. But you don't have to do it in the yoga pose. I often look like, sitting in my office. I was going to say look like this, but you guys can't see it. Or can see me. Sitting in my office in my chair, and I'll be meditating for 5 or 10 minutes. I use a lot of guided meditations. And they're very helpful. There's a million of them on YouTube. In fact, this afternoon, I'm running 2 guided meditation seminars at the Northbrook General Hospital for their staff. because basically there's so much research about meditation lately. It's like its own class of drug. It's good for everything from decreasing your mortality rate by something like 23% across the board, to decreasing post-operative swelling and heart disease and cancer recurrence and healing when you're in treatment for cancer. Like it helps everything, and there are zero side effects. So there's zero reason not to do it. Except, you got to find time. You can start with 5 minutes. Five, you know. So important. And I teach people to do this all the time. I teach my patients all the time.
Mm-hmm. No, this is great. And so have you been able to trickle down some of this information that you're learning in terms of how to take better care of yourself? Have you been able to trickle that down to Leo?
Yes, actually, with Leo, I have meditated. I haven't done it in a little while, but before bed, often we will get into bed and listen to a meditation and meditate. There's lots of them on YouTube for kids as well. So I hope that he learns a little bit by example. He sees, that we eat very well, we exercise. He's in a million different sports, as anyone who follows me on Facebook see. We did soccer and baseball this weekend, and today we were on the hockey treadmill. So, he's very, very active, and I'm also trying to teach him to do things like quiet his mind and meditate. And of course, he's the kid of a chiropractor, so he gets regularly adjusted, which is amazing for little guys, because all of these painful conditions that people come running to me for, they are cumulative throughout your lifetime. So if you get your kids treated once in a while, these things don't accumulate in your spine. They have much less chance of getting or having these things turn into painful conditions when they're a bit older. So, I tend to adjust him once a month, once every 2 months. But if you think about what they're doing, they're really hard on their bodies. They run into each other, especially little boys. Oh my gosh. Little boys, they run into each other. They jump off things that are way too high. Like he jumped off bleachers the other day and I almost had a heart attack. He was like, "Mom, I'm fine." I'm like, "Yeah, okay. I got to fix that now." And they're running around, shooting each other with Nerf guns and super active, and then they fall, and then they pop up and brush themselves off. So, we need to make sure that continues. Childhood is active.
And it's good to be active, right? It's great that you have him in all of these different sports. It's great that he's able to feel confident in his body, that he can run around and jump around and do all of those things, right? And I think that, as parents, we, our attitudes towards that fosters that for our kids too. We get them excited about the idea of doing it. We give them permission almost with our gaze, around doing that stuff. So it's good. What brings you joy about Leo?
Well, yesterday we were fortunate enough to go to medieval times. And for the very first time for all of us, all three of us had never been before. And Leo was a little bit nervous. He didn't really want to go because he was afraid somebody was going to get hurt. I told him about the jousting, and then I said, no, it's just a play, but he gets a bit nervous. But he just loved it. And he sat there just before the thing started, with this glowing sword thing. And and he turned to me and he said, "Mommy, thank you so much for buying me this and bringing me to this amazing thing." And he's so, even though he's just a little kid and he doesn't quite get that, sometimes as a little kid, they think all of these things are just sort of coming to them, or don't realize how fortunate they are. Once in a while, they'll really turn around and surprise you. I try to instill that in him, and he really is listening, and he was so excited. That was, that just made my heart burst open. Watching him watch with rapt attention to something was just amazing. Seeing his little face light up at something new and exciting. So he enjoys the new and exciting and doing something different, just like his father and I do. So that's really fun. And he has a joy for life. He loves doing. He has fun doing everything. So it's fun being part of that.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I can definitely see that that's modeled, right? Not just getting it from osmosis, trust me. And so what would you say it means to be a mindful and intentional mom in today's day and age?
That's a big question. Of course, I try to be mindful and intentional, but right now you ask that question and I think to myself, well, I just, I just yelled at him to try and get into the car this morning. You gotta go. We gotta go to work. I gotta be there. So we all have our moments and failings of trying to rush. I try not to rush him, but man, they take forever to do things sometimes, right?
It's true.
And I think to myself, I shouldn't be rushing him, but you got to be places at certain times. And if I left it to his devices, then I'd never get anywhere. But it is important to, keep trying our best at it, and acknowledge the fact that in this moment, things are great when they are. He loves to cuddle. He loves to have me snuggle in bed with him when I put him to bed till he's 8. I don't know how much longer that's going to last. Maybe
Take
not
it while
a
it
year.
lasts.
I know. And people have told me that, right? And so we're also, we're so busy. So last night I was snuggling him in bed and he said, "Can you stay a little longer?" And I said, "Yes, of course I can." I'm trying to shut my brain up from telling me about the 5 things and the lunches that I had to make, right? Because we all have a million things all the time. But it's so important to take those moments. And although I'm not perfect at doing it all the time, I try every week to get better at it and appreciate it and not get wrapped up in the minutia. The lunches can get made 5 minutes later. It doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in the morning though, because that's cause for chaos. Forget it.
That's insane. Yes. And it's so funny because I think that every year, like especially going into September and the kids being at school, I think that we think about, okay, how can we do things a little bit differently this year, right? Because you're always trying to improve things like making certain that lunches are done and, and all of those things, and maybe giving the kids more responsibility that year. How can I give them a little more responsibility this year? But I think the other thing too for me that has come up is really looking and seeing, how can I be even more intentional about our connection this year? That's been really big for me for the last little while. And one of the things I was actually just talking to my husband last night about this was I was saying to him, I think that this year I'm going to capture their faces in my hand a little bit more because they're getting older and it feels like they're just kind of rushing here, there, everywhere. And I just want to pause with them for a hot second and just look in their face and drink it in. Drink in their little eyes and their noses and all of those things, because it feels kind of like 10 years, like for my daughter's going to be 10 at the end of the year, but 10 years has passed so quickly. And
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And even Leo, he mentioned that the other day to me. I was floored, honestly, because how often does an 8-year-old say these things to me? He said, "Oh yeah, it's almost my birthday," because he was talking about his birthday, which is in January. It's not almost, but,
To them, it's almost.
Yeah, well, in February he starts planning his next birthday party. So he was talking about his birthday party. I'm going to be 9, and then I'm going to be 10, and then he saw the years rush by, and and then he said, but then. And then he got really upset and he started almost crying. He's very emotional, this kid of mine. He says, and then I'm going to be 26 and I have to move out, and he saw it rush by so quickly. He was very aware of that all of a sudden. He goes, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to move out, Mom, and not be here. And so I had to sit him down and say, okay, we have to enjoy today. That was us being intentional as well. We have to enjoy today. It does go by quickly, but as I never, you're always welcome here, but by the time you're 26 or 30, you're going to want to have your own family, just like Mom and Dad do. But it was a very profound moment. This only happened a couple of weeks ago. I was floored that my 8-year-old could see it, because I think that's unusual, It
is unusual, and it's very insightful for him to even be thinking about that, right? Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Freaked me out a little.
And that is part of their job.
Absolutely. They're excellent at it.
Right? Keep us on our toes. Okay. So if you can pass on a blessing to Leo that he would hear sometime in the future, what would you say to him?
Oh, wow. Just keep being you, whatever that means. Putting one foot forward in front of the other, you all the time.
And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. This has been such a blessing for me. I would love to know what advice or words of wisdom you may have for other moms who are out there who are doing their best and maybe discovering that, they're trying to balance life being a mom, being a working woman, maybe sometimes struggling with anxiety or depression. What words of wisdom do you have for those moms out there who are balancing or trying to balance it all?
It doesn't need to be perfect. Just get it done. Just get whatever is on your list, one of those things done. If you are fed and the baby is fed and everybody is still alive, you're good. Put one foot in front of the other. Keep going. It'll get done. And don't be so hard on yourself.
You've now reached the end of another episode of Village Mama. If you're enjoying it, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and also give it a 5-star review on iTunes. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. So until next time, keep treating yourself and others with compassion and grace. Take care.